What if 5 forgotten words could bring an empire to its knees? In a city where power is inherited in blood and silence is the price of survival, the most dangerous weapon was never a gun. It was a language no one was supposed to remember. Tonight, billionaires will stop breathing. A dragon will hesitate. An emperor will make a choice he can never undo. She walks in unnoticed, a waitress with no name, no history, no future. Or so they think. Because before this night ends, the palace will bleed, a dynasty will fracture, and the truth buried for decades will demand payment in blood. And when the question is finally asked, was she a servant who learned the forbidden tongue, or the ghost of a family they tried to erase? Stay with this story until the end, because the final seat at the table was never empty. Subscribe now for cinematic stories where power lies, blood remembers, and silence always breaks. The private dining room felt less like a restaurant and more like a sealed tomb. The door was thick oak, reinforced with steel hidden beneath polished grain. The walls were lined with soundproof velvet panels, so nothing spoken inside could ever leak out. At the center sat a table carved from a single slab of dark wood, scarred faintly with marks that no amount of polish could erase. Men who controlled shipping lanes, governments, banks, and blood sat around it, their tailored suits brushing against chairs worth more than most houses. No one spoke. Even breathing felt loud. Every eye was fixed on the empty chair at the head of the table. Chairman Kong Muhyan had not yet arrived, but his absence carried more weight than any presence. His name alone was enough to turn generals into servants and criminals into obedient children. He was not discussed openly. He was remembered in whispers and nightmares. Some of the men present had built fortunes on orders he had once given. Others had buried brothers because of them. Tonight, he had come to judge. The door opened. The sound was soft, but it sliced through the room like a blade. 2 men in dark coats stepped inside first, their movements economical, eyes scanning corners with practiced indifference. Then the old man entered. Chairman Kong Muhyan was shorter than expected. His back was slightly bent, his hair thin and silver, his suit unfashionable by modern standards. But the moment he crossed the threshold, the air changed. It thickened. Hardened men straightened unconsciously. A billionaire whose hands had ordered massacres swallowed hard. The chairman did not look at them. He walked slowly, a gnarled wooden cane tapping once, twice, each sound echoing like a countdown. His eyes were dark and bottomless, the kind that had seen entire villages disappear and slept well afterward. At the far end of the room, Kong Taejun rose instantly from his chair. The dragon of the city stood tall, sharp-featured, immaculately dressed in black. His suit was modern, aggressive, tailored for power. He bowed deeply, lower than he bowed to anyone else alive. Father. Chairman Kong Muhyan paused for just a fraction of a second. His gaze flicked over his son without warmth, without approval, without rejection. Then he walked past him. The slight dismissal landed harder than a slap. The men around the table felt it. Taejun felt it burn through his spine. The chairman sat. Only then did everyone else dare to sit. Silence returned, heavier than before. This, Chairman Kong said at last, his voice low and gravel thick, is what you have built. He was not speaking standard Korean. It was older, rougher, a dialect pulled from fishing villages and blood-soaked hills along the southern coast. A language meant to exclude outsiders and shame pretenders. Taejun answered carefully, using clean, educated Korean. Yes, father. I built it for the family. A faint curl of disdain touched the old man's lip. Built with foreign money, the chairman said in the dialect. It smells soft. The men around the table stiffened. Taejun's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. The world has changed. The world does not change, the chairman replied. Men do. His eyes shifted, landing briefly on the others. On the advisors. On the men who had risen under Taejun's rule. Children, he muttered. One of them, Seo Min-kyu, smiled thinly and leaned forward, emboldened by years of surviving court politics. Chairman, with respect, our reach. The cane struck the floor. Once. Seo Min-kyu froze, his mouth snapping shut. The smile evaporated from his face, replaced by a flicker of naked fear. The chairman did not look at him again. He pushed his untouched water glass aside, as if it offended him. His gaze drifted, bored, dismissive, until it stopped. By the wall stood a waitress. She had been there the entire time. Asha Noir held a silver tray against her waist, posture straight, eyes lowered. Her uniform was pristine, a white dress with a red vest tied neatly at her back. Her hair was pulled tight, severe, deliberately unremarkable. She was invisible by design. Chairman Kong studied her for a long moment, as if noticing a crack in stone. Wine. He barked suddenly, addressing her, not his son. Red. One that tastes of soil, not chemicals. The words were spoken in the same ancient dialect. Asha's breath caught. Her fingers tightened around the tray. Kong Taejun turned slightly, irritation flashing across his face. Father, she doesn't understand. I understand, Asha said softly. The words cut through the room. Every head snapped toward her. Taejun stared, disbelief flashing across his eyes. Seo Min-kyu's face drained of color. One of the bodyguards shifted, hand dropping instinctively toward his jacket. Asha lifted her gaze. For the first time, she looked directly at Chairman Kong Moo-hyun. She dipped her head, not in the shallow bow of service, but in a deep, deliberate gesture of old-world respect. Then she spoke again, in the same rough dialect, her pronunciation flawless. Good evening, Chairman Kong. The room seemed to implode. The effect was immediate and violent. It was as if an invisible line had been crossed, one no one else even knew existed. The dialect was not something one learned casually. It was guarded, protected, passed down like a weapon, and yet she spoke it as if it had lived in her mouth all her life. Chairman Kong did not move, but his eyes sharpened. They locked onto her face with predatory focus, stripping away the uniform, the role, the assumptions. He was no longer bored. He was hunting. Taejun felt a cold ripple crawl up his spine. Who taught you that tongue? The chairman asked quietly. Asha held his gaze. Her heart hammered, but her voice did not shake. My grandmother. The word hung heavy in the air. The coast, she continued. The southern hills near the sea. She said the old words carried truth. A slow, dangerous smile crept across the chairman's face. Bring the wine, he said. The one you would choose. Then, without looking away from her, he added, you will serve my table. Only you. The words landed like a verdict. Kong Taejun opened his mouth to object, then stopped. His father raised a single finger. Silence. The dragon swallowed his protest whole. Asha inclined her head once more. Yes, Chairman. As she turned and walked toward the door, her legs threatened to give way beneath her. She did not look back. She did not dare. Behind her, the most powerful men in the city sat frozen, staring at the empty space she had occupied, realizing all at once that something ancient had just awakened. And none of them yet understood the cost. Outside the private room, the palace restaurant hummed with a carefully controlled illusion of normalcy. Soft music drifted through marble halls. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over polished floors. The scent of expensive wine and rare spices filled the air. But beneath it all, the palace was a fortress. Hidden cameras watched every angle. Armed security blended seamlessly with staff. Reinforced walls and controlled entrances ensured that no one entered without permission, and no one left without consequence. It was Kong Taejun's kingdom. From his usual table, near the center of the main floor, he observed everything with cold precision. He knew which senator preferred which whiskey, which producer owed him money, which waiter could be trusted to forget what he heard. Control was his religion. Yet tonight, control felt fragile. He glanced toward the private wing, jaw clenched. His father's presence scraped against old scars. Taejun had built this empire brick by brick, bloodless compared to the past, efficient, modern. And still, one look from the old man reduced him to a boy seeking approval. He hated that. He hated that a waitress had just spoken a language he barely understood. In the wine cellar below, Asha Noir leaned against a rack of bottles, breathing through the tremor in her hands. She closed her eyes briefly, letting memory wash over her. Her grandmother's voice. The sound of waves against stone. The cadence of words meant to survive fire. She selected a bottle slowly, deliberately. Earthy, unpretentious, rooted. As she ascended the stairs, the weight of what she had done settled fully into her chest. She had spoken, and in doing so, she had stepped out of the shadows forever. Above her, in the private room, Chairman Kong Moo-hyun waited, eyes burning with recognition, suspicion, and something far more dangerous. Interest. The question had already begun to circulate in every mind touched by that moment. What had she said? And who was she really? The Empire had felt the tremor. And this was only the beginning. The room did not breathe. Crystal glasses hovered halfway to lips. A fork stopped midair. Even the soft instrumental music bleeding from hidden speakers seemed to thin, as if the walls themselves were listening. Asha Noir stood still, tray balanced perfectly against her forearm. The 5 words had already left her mouth, but their echo lingered like a gunshot that never quite faded. Chairman Kong Muhayan did not blink. For a full 3 seconds, nothing moved. Then the old man's fingers tightened around the head of his cane. The wood creaked softly. Kong Taejun felt it before he understood it. The shift. The invisible current that always bent toward him, that obeyed him, that affirmed his place as the dragon of the palace, suddenly tilted away. He turned slowly toward Asha, disbelief sharpening his jaw. "You," he said, his voice low, controlled. "Repeat what you just said." Asha met his eyes without flinching. That alone sent a murmur rippling around the table. No waitress ever held the dragon's gaze. No servant survived doing so. She inclined her head, not submissive, but precise. Respectful on her terms. "I asked," she said calmly, "if the emperor prefers the wine that remembers its soil, or the wine that learned to lie." The dialect was flawless. Ancient southern inflection. The vowels rounded the way they hadn't for decades. The cadence was exact, measured, ceremonial. Not memorized. Lived. A lieutenant on Taejun's left swore under his breath. "That dialect," another whispered, forgetting himself, "it died with." "Silence," Chairman Kong said softly. The room snapped shut. He leaned forward slightly, eyes never leaving Asha's face. For the first time since his entrance, the chairman smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the expression of a man who had just found a long-lost blade exactly where he left it buried. "Who taught you?" he asked. "No one alive," Asha replied. Taejun's hand curled into a fist. "This is a game," he said sharply. "A trick." Someone fed her lines. The cane struck the floor. Once. The sound cracked through the room like thunder. "Did I ask you?" the chairman said, his tone unchanged, "to speak?" Taejun froze. Heat crept up his neck, humiliation blooming in front of men who feared him an hour ago. The chairman's gaze returned to Asha. "The second word you used," he said. "You softened it." "What?" Asha inhaled. This was the edge, the place where liars slipped. "Because the original meaning," she said, "implies ownership through blood, not force. And blood cannot be taken. It can only be inherited or betrayed." The chairman's smile widened. Several men shifted uncomfortably. Advisor Co Min-kyu, seated 2 places from the chairman, narrowed his eyes. He had spent his life cataloging threats. This woman had just announced herself without raising her voice. "Bring her closer," the chairman said. Asha stepped forward. Not because she was summoned. Because she chose to. The chairman gestured to the seat beside him. An empty chair reserved for advisors, generals, sons. Gasps followed. Taejun's breath caught. "She is staff," Taejun said louder now. "This is inappropriate." The chairman did not look at him. "She is language," he replied. "And language precedes power." He turned to Asha. "Sit." She did. The dragon's chair suddenly felt very far away. As servants scrambled, unsure whether to intervene or vanish, the chairman waved them off. "Leave us," he said. "All but her." The room emptied with the speed of fear. Co Min-kyu paused at the doorway, eyes flicking once more to Asha's face before he bowed and exited. His mind was already moving. Dialect like that did not appear by accident. When the doors closed, the chairman poured wine himself. His hands, once steady enough to sign death warrants without smudging ink, trembled slightly as he filled a glass and slid it toward Asha. "Translate for us," he said. "Tonight, you are my tongue." Taejun stared at his father. "You're undermining me." The chairman sipped his wine. "You undermined yourself the day you forgot where you came from." Taejun's jaw tightened. "She doesn't belong here." Asha's voice cut through the tension. "Neither did you," she said quietly. "Once." The room seemed to tilt. The chairman laughed. Not loudly. Not fully. But enough. "Yes," he said. "That is why she stays." From that moment, power began to bleed. The next hours unfolded like a slow public execution, without blood, without screams. The chairman spoke in riddles, proverbs, half-phrases from an era when men ruled through implication. Asha translated each line with precision, never softening the cruelty. "You mistake fear for loyalty," the chairman said. Asha's voice followed. "He says fear expires. Loyalty compounds." A lieutenant shifted in his seat. "You build walls and call them kingdoms. He says your fortresses are prisons you live inside." Each translation landed like a blade. Taejun watched men he commanded glance away from him, doubt infecting their eyes. "Enough," Taejun snapped. "She is editorializing." The chairman raised a finger. Asha met Taejun's gaze. "Then correct me," she said, in the same language. Silence swallowed him. He couldn't. That humiliation burned deeper than any slap. By the time dessert was served, the hierarchy had rearranged itself. Chairs meant nothing anymore. Attention did. The chairman leaned closer to Asha as if the world had narrowed to the space between them. "You hear things," he said. "Things my son no longer does." "I hear what survives," Asha replied. "And what survives?" he asked. She met his eyes. "Truth. When it is patient." The chairman nodded. "You will translate for me. Everywhere. From now on." Taejun rose abruptly. "This is madness." The chairman looked up. "Sit." Taejun didn't. "I built this empire," he said. "I protected it. You hand it to a stranger because she speaks pretty words." The chairman stood. The room seemed to bow with him. "I built the bones," he said. "You decorated the corpse." The words landed. Heavy. Final. That night, whispers spread faster than orders ever had. Taejun's men gathered in corners, voices low, resentment sharp. "She's a spy. She's a witch. She's replacing him." No one said the most dangerous thought out loud. "She's better." Seo Min-kyu did not join the gossip. He returned to his office, locked the door, and pulled old files from a hidden drawer. Migration records, shipping manifests, unofficial death counts from a massacre buried under 3 administrations. He paused at a faded photograph. Women lined up at a port, faces blurred, names misspelled. One face looked familiar. Too familiar. In the palace, Asha stood behind the chairman as he received reports, corrected generals, dismantled egos with a sentence. She translated everything. She added nothing. She removed nothing. That was what terrified them. She did not flatter. She did not protect. She did not soften. She simply revealed. The chairman began requesting her presence even when language was unnecessary. Meals. Walks through the inner garden. Long silences broken only by the sound of koi and water. "You remind me of my mother," he said once, watching her from the corner of his eye. Asha did not ask how. She spoke little, he continued. But when she did, men listened. Asha nodded. Then they were wise. Taejun watched from afar, something dark and unfamiliar coiling in his chest. It wasn't jealousy. It was displacement. One night, as rain lashed the palace windows, he confronted her in a corridor lined with ancestral portraits. "Who are you really?" he asked. Asha stopped walking, turned slowly. "Someone you were taught to forget," she said. "You're playing a dangerous game." "No," she replied. "I'm ending one." Behind a closed door, Seo Min-kyu stared at confirmation on his screen. Birth records. A changed surname. A missing ship. Asha Noor was not a ghost. She was a reckoning. By the time the chairman called her his shadow, the palace had already begun to fracture. She was no longer invisible. She was inevitable. The palace did not sleep. It only pretended to. Footsteps echoed through marble corridors long after midnight. Guards rotating with quieter urgency than usual. Whispers traveling faster than orders. Something was wrong. Everyone felt it. No one dared to name it. Seo Min-kyu stood at the center of the inner council chamber, spine straight, hands folded behind his back. His glasses reflected the low chandelier light, masking his eyes. Around him sat men who had once dictated markets, wars, and lives with a nod. Tonight, they shifted in their seats. "She is not who she claims to be," Seo Min-kyu said calmly. "She is a surviving ember of the Han bloodline." The room murmured. At the far end, Kang Taejun sat with one leg crossed over the other, expression unreadable. Asha stood several steps behind him, hands relaxed at her sides, her face a still lake. Seo Min-kyu continued, voice gaining strength. The Han were not merely victims. They were a destabilizing force. Their survival threatens the legitimacy of everything this empire stands on. A lieutenant leaned forward. You're saying she's a symbol. I'm saying she's a fuse, Co Min-kyu replied. And fuses are meant to be cut. The word execution landed softly, almost politely. Several men nodded. Others looked away. Co Min-kyu turned toward Tae-jun. For the good of the palace, she must be eliminated. Tonight. Silence followed. Then Tae-jun stood. The sound of his chair scraping back was sharp enough to flinch the room. No, he said. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. But it was absolute. Co Min-kyu frowned. This is bigger than. This is my house. Tae-jun interrupted, stepping forward. And you forget yourself. A ripple of tension moved through the chamber. You advise, Tae-jun continued. You do not command. Co Min-kyu's jaw tightened. You're choosing sentiment over survival. I'm choosing order, Tae-jun said. Something you're dangerously close to disrupting. Asha watched them, saying nothing. Her eyes moved from face to face, memorizing who flinched and who didn't. Co Min-kyu bowed his head slightly. Then I will wait, he said. But the truth does not wait forever. Tae-jun held his gaze. Neither do I. Guards stepped closer to Co Min-kyu, not arresting him, but reminding him of gravity. He inclined his head once more and stepped back, forced into silence, but not defeat. As the chamber emptied, Tae-jun did not look at Asha. Come with me, he said quietly. They took a private elevator to the upper levels, rising past floors no one else was permitted to enter. The hum of the ascent felt like a countdown. You should have let him speak, Asha said at last. Tae-jun exhaled. If he finished, you'd already be dead. The doors opened into the penthouse. The chairman's private domain was stark compared to the palace below. No excess. No ornamentation. Just space, glass, and history. Chairman Kang Moo-hyun stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back, looking out at a city that glittered like something already buried. You brought her, he said without turning. Yes, Tae-jun replied. Good, the chairman said. I was tired of pretending this could wait. Asha stepped forward. You knew, she said. It wasn't a question. The chairman turned slowly. His face was older here, stripped of ceremony. I knew she would come, he said. I did not know it would be you. Her throat tightened. You let my family die. No, he said. The word cut deeper than a denial should have. I did not order the massacre. The room seemed to fracture. Asha stared at him. You ruled everything. I ruled outcomes, the chairman replied. Not every method. Tae-jun looked between them. Explain. The chairman walked to a low table and opened a hidden compartment. Inside lay documents aged by secrecy, not time. Your advisor, he said, nodding toward the door, is the son of a man who wanted my throne before you were born. Asha's pulse roared in her ears. Co Min-kyu's father controlled the southern trade routes. The chairman continued. The Han stood in his way. They refused to sell land. Refused to bend language. Refused to disappear. So you allowed it, Asha said bitterly. I was away, the chairman said. Negotiating a war that would have killed 10,000 more. When I returned, the port was ash. Silence pressed down hard. I covered it, he admitted. Not to protect him. To keep the empire from tearing itself apart. Asha staggered back a step. Her hatred had been a straight line. Now it splintered. You let me believe it was you, she whispered. The chairman's voice softened. I let the world believe it. That is the burden of power. Tae-jun felt sick. All this time, he said. We hunted ghosts while the serpent slept in our walls. The door slammed open. Co Min-kyu stormed in, flanked by armed men. Enough lies, he snapped. The truth belongs to those willing to use it. Asha turned to him slowly. Your father murdered my family. Co Min-kyu smiled thinly. My father built this empire when yours refused to evolve. The chairman straightened. You will stand down. No, Co Min-kyu said. Tonight, I finish what he started. Guns rose. From both sides. Tae-jun stepped in front of Asha instinctively. The air crackled with inevitability. Outside, thunder rolled. And somewhere deep in the palace, history held its breath, ready to be rewritten in blood. The first gunshot shattered the illusion of control. It didn't come from Tae-jun's side. It came from behind Co Min-kyu. One of the men he had trusted, one of the guards who had bowed to the chairman moments earlier, hesitated, then moved. His weapon barked once, twice, aimed not at the dragon, not at the emperor, but at Seo Min-kyu's flank. Chaos exploded. Glass shattered as bullets tore through the penthouse windows. The city lights beyond fractured into streaks of fire and color. Men shouted in Korean, English, curses overlapping, commands colliding. Furniture splintered. Smoke bloomed thick and acrid. Asha dropped instinctively, the sound of gunfire slamming into her chest like a physical force. She felt Taejun's hand grab her shoulder, pulling her down behind a marble table. Stay down, he shouted over the noise. Seo Min-kyu spun, disbelief on his face, fury replacing shock as he realized betrayal had found him too late to stop it. You think this ends me? He roared, firing wildly. I am the future. The chairman did not move. He stood where he was, cane forgotten, eyes sharp and lucid, watching the room like a man who had already crossed the line between life and death and found it unimpressive. Another guard went down. Blood spread across the polished floor, dark and fast. Taejun rose just enough to fire, precise and controlled. He wasn't angry. He was efficient. Each shot was an answer, not a question. Seo Min-kyu ducked behind a pillar, shouting orders to men who were no longer sure whose orders mattered. This palace is mine. Seo Min-kyu screamed. You built it weak. Asha crawled, heart hammering, trying to make sense of the noise, the truth, the impossible convergence of everything she had been running toward her entire life. Then it happened. A sharp crack, closer than the others. The chairman staggered. For a fraction of a second, no one noticed. Then Asha saw him reach for his chest. No, she breathed. Another shot rang out, and the chairman moved. Not away, not to cover, but forward. He stepped directly into the line of fire. A bodyguard's bullet, meant for Asha, struck him instead. The impact drove him back. He fell hard against the wall, sliding down slowly, leaving a smear of red across pale stone. Time seemed to warp. Asha screamed his name. Not chairman, not emperor, but something raw and human that surprised even her. Taejun turned, horror cutting through his control. Father! Seo Min-kyu saw the opening. He lunged, weapon raised, eyes blazing with triumph. You should have let history stay buried, he shouted. He never finished the sentence. Taejun fired once. The shot hit Seo Min-kyu center mass. The force knocked him backward, his weapon clattering across the floor. He stared at Taejun, mouth opening and closing, as if trying to speak, to curse, to justify a lifetime of blood. Then he fell. The room fell silent except for the ringing in Asha's ears. The surviving guards froze, weapons lowering slowly as the shape of the truth settled over them. Their loyalty recalibrated in real time. Taejun rushed to his father's side, dropping to his knees. Blood soaked through the chairman's shirt, warm and unstoppable. Asha knelt too, trembling hands pressing uselessly against the wound. No, Taejun whispered. No, stay with me. The chairman's breathing was shallow, wet, but his eyes were clear. He looked at Asha first. Little one, he rasped, voice barely there. You carry too much for someone so young. Tears blurred her vision. You saved me. He smiled faintly. I saved us. He coughed, blood flecking his lips, then turned his gaze to Taejun. You did not hesitate, he said. That is why you will rule. I don't want this like this, Taejun said, voice breaking despite himself. Not with you. The chairman lifted a trembling hand. Taejun took it, gripping hard. The debt, the old man whispered, eyes drifting back to Asha. Tell me, is it paid? Asha felt something in her chest break open. Not rage, not hatred, but release. A weight she had carried since before she had words finally loosened its grip. It is paid, she said softly. By truth. By blood. By choice. The chairman exhaled, long and slow. Good, he whispered. His hand went slack. The emperor was gone. For a moment, no one moved. Then the world resumed. Taejun stood slowly, blood on his hands, his face no longer that of a son, but of a ruler forged in fire. He turned to the guards. Seo Min-kyu was a traitor, he said, voice steady, commanding. He attempted a coup and murdered loyal men. My father died stopping him. No one argued. The truth, in this world, was whatever survived. Later, as dawn crept across the skyline, the palace began to breathe again. Orders were given. Bodies removed. Stories aligned. By the time the city woke, the narrative was complete. The chairman had fallen defending the empire. The dragon had ascended, and the woman at his side was no longer invisible. At the palace that night, the tables were set as always. Senators, magnates, celebrities returned, sensing power but not its scars. At table 1, Kang Tae-jun sat alone, for only a moment. Then Asha joined him. She wore the same white dress, the same red vest. But now, no one mistook it for servitude. Whispers followed her steps. Curiosity, fear, reverence. Tae-jun placed his hand over hers, openly. "This is Asha Hanwar," he announced calmly. "She speaks for me. She stands with me." No one questioned it. The dragon did not erase the waitress. He enthroned her. And in the palace of power, the old words found new meaning, not as weapons of the past, but as the foundation of a new dynasty, not built on forgetting, but on choosing what must never be forgotten.